Hello, this is Yaakov Kronenberg from Jerusalem, and tonight another class in a series of classes on Virgo ascendant and Mercury in the different signs. Tonight we're going to do Mercury in Scorpio, and it's an interesting combination. Again, the Virgo personality, it really wants to correct itself. It wants to complete itself. It wants to fulfill itself. The Virgo is an interesting sign in that it always feels to a certain degree that it's lacking something. It's right. The Virgo, if the Virgo has a problem, one of their problems is that they don't. How should I put it? They have certain inferiority feelings in a sense, because they're connected with the house of servitude and servants, and sometimes they feel like they're not as good as other people. So the Virgos are always trying to improve themselves. If you see Virgos, you see people going to self-help classes and always learning stuff and always trying to improve themselves. Those are the Virgonian type of people. They're always trying to, whatever they're lacking, or whatever they find that they're missing something in themselves, they go and try to improve that area of their life. And so, let's say when you have Virgo now on the ascendant, Mercury falls in the third house, so then the area you're going to work on, really to improve yourself and to help people, is going to be in the third house. The third house is the house of communication, the house of writing, the house of travel. It's connected with travel. It's connected with education, and so a lot of people that have Virgo rising, which is and Mercury is the ruler of, in Adam Rishon's chart, Mercury is the ruler of the third house, so it's very good in the third house. It's so it's almost like a double third house, because you got that natural Mercury there with a mercurial type of ascendant. And so the person with Mercury in the third is going to be very interested in, again, in learning, in communicating, in writing, in speaking, all sorts of things like that. The area of interpersonal communications, all sorts of things like that. And when you have it in Scorpio, there's going to be an added emotional element to it. In other words, Mercury in Scorpio is going to, again, expend itself in social relationships. The Scorpio has a certain, is always very deep, right? The person who has Mercury in Scorpio is a deep thinker. Is a deep thinker, and they have and they want to express themselves emotionally, right? It's more an emotional. The Mercury is more emotional here in Scorpio. Scorpio is like, although Scorpio is a sort of pent-up type of emotion. Remember, the Scorpio is always trying to protect itself. It builds all sort of complicated self-protection. So when you got Mercury there, the mind is working overtime to build up this defense system, but it's emotionally very strong emotional needs with the Mercury in Scorpio. It's going to take it sort of out of trying to be, it's going to be harder for the Mercury to be this impassive, what do you call it, unemotional type of being that works like a computer. When he has Scorpio, he or she, they have Scorpio on the ruling the Mercury, and so it's an interesting combination when you have it there. I want to look at a chart tonight of a very famous man who has this combination: Virgo ascendant, Mercury in Scorpio. His name is Paul Simon. He's a musician, very famous musician. He was partners with a man named Garfunkel, and they had a group called Simon and Garfunkel. It was one of the most popular, successful musical groups in the 1970s, something like that, 1960, late 1960s, 1970s. And if you look at his chart, he has, again, the Virgo ascendant with Mercury in Scorpio, so it's going to be very communicative, right? Communicative, writing. He, besides being a musician, he also wrote, I think, a Broadway play. He wrote and also wrote the music and wrote the play, helped write the play. So he's very artistic. We'll see where the artist comes, not so much from the Mercury, the writing ability and that, the idea of this interpersonal communications and things like that, that all comes from the Mercury. But if you look at his chart, Mercury is very powerful in his chart, even though it's in the third house, which is a weak house. This is his natural house for Virgo. And the Mercury makes a good aspect to the ascendant, which is fairly close, 5 degrees, from being in sextile to the ascendant. So it brings Mercury, of course, onto the ascendant twice. So it's going to add to that mercurial nature. And on top of that, if you look at it closely, his chart, you'll see he has Neptune exactly on the 4th house cusp, exactly opposite the midheaven. And so Venus is the planet of art. And so, see, we always say if you have an exact aspect, that increases tremendously the intensity of the planet and the motivation behind that planet. And so he's going to be very, very strongly interested in a career in the arts. Right, because of that Venus exactly opposite the Mercury, and the Venus also makes the most tight aspect to the ascendant. It's 4 degrees from being an exact square from the ascendant, and so it's going to add again to his artistic interests. Right, they're going to compete with his desire to be let's say, to be more sedate type of thing, a more Virgonian nature. It's going to pull against it by being square, and it's going to give him his desire to be in art. And his sun also is in Libra, also connected to the artistry. And so you see the two most important planets there in his chart are Virgo and, Mercury and Venus. He's also got the Uranus and Saturn conjunction. Uranus is very high, the highest planet in his chart. It made him very experimental in his career, experimenting in a lot of different musical styles, and it made him very, let's say, a person who wants his freedom, right? When you have Uranus so strong, you have a desire for freedom. That's interesting. We talk about marriage. If you look at his marriage thing, he's got Pisces on the 7th house cusp, which is mutable. And the ruler of Pisces is Jupiter, also mutable. And it so it makes trouble for the marriages person with the Uranus so strong with Saturn. Uranus is connected also to Saturn, and it's and so it causes a desire for freedom together with all this mutability in the 7th house. So it's not a good sign for marriage at all. Difficulty, and he's been married, I think, about 3 times. And what else can we say here? And the Jupiter is nice though. See, he's got Jupiter in Gemini, even though it's in detriment. It's Jupiter, and it's in his house of career. So, and it's made a very tight trine to the Sun. So you see, he's going to get fame in his career. You see it from there. But in any case, the main point we want to make is that he's a Virgo rising with Mercury in Scorpio, and his basic nature is going to be this communicator. And I thank everybody for listening.